Hello and welcome to the England Rugby podcast with O2 Inside Line. This week I'm joined by Detysha, Harper and Lark Davies. Morning, Detysha, Harper, Lark Davies. How are you, champions? Six Nations final yesterday. How are you feeling today?
Yeah, obviously really pleased. Few tired bodies around after yesterday, I think. Like, a very physical game, but yeah, to get 3 Six Nations titles is quite an achievement. So yeah, got to see the massive positives in that.
Tysh, how about you? How's winning three? Well, you haven't been involved with 3 in a row, have you? But you're just continuing that form.
I've been involved in 2, and I tell you, I woke up this morning feeling like a winner.
Good on you. But I was obviously at the game yesterday. It was tense, you know, especially for you, Lark, watching that game close out towards the end. How was that for you in those final moments?
It's always really nerve-wracking, but like, I think it's strange, isn't it, how you feel in games? And I felt like we had the control still, and we, you know, I had utter like faith in the girls that we could go and get that win. So yeah, like obviously when they got that penalty and it came to 7-6, like it was like, wow, this is really close now. Like, I think, you know, one standout for me was our defence yesterday. So massively, like when I came off the pitch, just seeing the girls sort of get each other like backer, just massively like riling the girls up and like cheering them on. And yeah, it's just one of those where you're sort of like sat on the bench just like, come on girls, we got this. And yeah, obviously another penalty, 3 points, and yeah, came away with the win.
It's fair to say Marley Packer is like a foghorn. You can hear her all game. She's so consistent with her noise. And you're right, they threw literally the kitchen sink at you guys. They tried everything, and your D was fantastic. Tysh, for you being on the field at the end of the game, what were those last moments like for you? I'm thinking going into the last sort of quarter of the game, there's so much on the line. You can't kind of take your foot off the gas. How was that for you?
So when I went on, I was like, God, one mistake here could lose us a game. So I was just thinking, be really clinical, like no silly pens, and then just controlling everything I could control on my behalf. And then just remembering my role really around the park. And I was like, if I get that right, like that's me doing my job. And then just making sure to hunt in the threes. Because I think it was like, we don't have to score, but we just don't like need to let them score, was my like mentality. So I was just like, big hits.
So you just said hunt in the threes, right?
Yeah.
Can you give me a bit of context around that?
Oh, so basically you hunt in threes and you've got like your inside, your outside, and then yourself. So like just talking to each other, and then there as a line, we should stay connected.
So you're talking about defence, basically going and whacking people together, yeah? Hunting in threes, I like that. The set-piece battle was really dominant from France first half. Second half, England seemed to have flipped that on its head, actually. And I was thinking those last kind of stages of the game, it was basically integral that England's set-piece was immaculate. How was that battle for you up front, Tysh?
So basically watching from the sideline, I was like, what was going on? But then when I was in it, I was like, that's why. Because like they'd just come in from anywhere, and I'd be like, how have they got there? But just like line outs, because I don't think I had any scrums when I was on. The line outs when we did the drive in there, like 22, they tried to sack it, but then we survived that one. It was just kind of everyone sticking together and just trusting our process.
Yeah, they were quite effective on their sack. I don't actually know the rules around sacking. I just know it takes a really brave person to do it, because if you can do it straight away, it's really effective. After the game, obviously, I don't know, was it relief? Was it what was the feeling for you, Lark?
No, I think it was more like elation and like happiness, like probably, yeah, like as the whistle goes, a bit of relief. But I think you've definitely got to see the positives. And like, I think personally for me, like I found the game quite frustrating because I made a few mistakes, like not straight to the line out. So I'm quite like a hard person on myself. So like in those moments, I'm like, right, focus on actually what we've just achieved. Like all the work that we've put in to get to that point is massive. And, you know, it's been a whole squad effort to get us to that point, and especially sort of with the circumstances at the moment, like not just us playing on the pitch, but like our staff members, like our doctor, Nikki Ponsford, director of rugby, who's done, like, they've all done so much hard work to get us to that point. So like I think it's just like putting it into perspective a bit of actually like there's been so many different parts of this, and to come away with that win and win the championship's massive and should be celebrated.
Yeah, good on you. I think it's a really interesting point, and I think the sooner you can work that out as a player, the better, because we're all hard on ourselves. We all want to improve and get better, but ultimately it's a team sport, and ultimately you go out to win. You know, I used to be kind of like really self-critical, but you don't want to be that person detracting from what the team's done. And I think, and I don't think I enjoyed winning because it was all just part of the process. You know, get better, win, maybe lose along the way. But yeah, I like that. Very wise from you old head at 26 years old. Celebrations after the feeling. Obviously saw you girls on the field. What about changing rooms? What was said in there, Tysh?
Everyone came in drips and drabs in the changing rooms. And then at first it was silent because Shauna was getting drug tested and it was her speaker. So it took us like half an hour to figure out how you connect to that. And everyone was like, is there any music? No. And then we got that connected. And then everyone was literally just buzzing. And then after we like stopped buzzing a bit, there was like, oh, hot burritos, anyone?
What, so straight to food, yeah?
Yeah.
Music, what was the first tune on in the changing room?
I think it was DJ Khaled, All I Do Is Win.
Nice. Is that kind of like the go-to team song?
No. So before the game, we have, I don't know what the song's called, but...
Called Sunshine. Sunshine? Yeah.
I don't know. But
they played it as we were like collecting medals.
Now that the tournament's done, how do you think you guys progressed as a team through the tournament? Because watching your games, you know, you kind of put together moments of brilliance, slow starts, quick starts. How, when you look back at the games, how do you think you kind of progressed as a team throughout the tournament?
Yeah, I think obviously you still got a bit of looking at sort of yesterday's game to go, but I think there's been moments where we have shown sort of the progression we've made from the start of the tournament to the end. And I think we've had sort of moments of brilliance and moments that we know we need to work on. And so I think it's definitely still a bit of a work in progress in terms of where we're at as a squad. And I think that's not a bad place to be at all. We've got plenty of learning to do. And obviously, like I think yesterday, obviously to come away with that win, but I think, like I've said before, looking at it with a bit more of a critical eye, like us forwards will know set piece wise that we want to perform better in those games, in those against France, you know, when we come to the World Cup and the likes of sort of Canada, New Zealand. So yeah, definitely have progressed. And, you know, I think you've seen each week different standout performers, and, you know, I think it shows how exciting women's rugby is. But I definitely think if we put our critical hat on, that we've still got some learning to do, and there's been different progressions in each game in different areas, but actually we still want to go out and put in that sort of like well-rounded whole performance.
That's I suppose it's a good thing, because the tournament's there to be won, right? It doesn't matter how you play, ultimately, as long as you're winning. But I think for you guys with the long term, if you think about New Zealand coming up, there's so much, like, we've seen glimpses of what it is. And guess what? You never play the perfect game. No. Like, you never, like, every coach talks about the perfect game, but then you talk to mids, you talk to Eddie Jones, and they're like, there's no such thing as a perfect game. But you always need something to aspire to, right?
Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, it shows the quality of your side that, you know, you go and win a tournament and you're probably still not, you know, close to that perfect performance. There's loads for you guys to work on, which is cool. Tysh, the women's tournament stood on its own this year for the first time. How do you think that went?
I think it was great, because sometimes when we play now on a Saturday and like the boys play on a Saturday, viewers then have to choose between if they want to watch men's rugby or women's rugby. And then I also like the fact that yesterday it was a final, and yeah, it was streamed on actual TV. But even like the Premiership now being available to watch that, like you can watch on YouTube, sometimes it's streamed, but most clubs are like streaming now. And I think that's a great thing, because for people to know about women's rugby, like you have to see it and you have to watch it, you have to get access to it. But I like the fact that it's done on its own, because then it pulled in more viewers, because some people are like, oh, I don't want to watch women's rugby. But then it just happens to be on telly. They're like, oh, actually, it's not so bad.
Yeah, or flog it. Let's not get into flog it. No, but I'm with you. There's so much. It's almost like there's just so much rugby on. I think you guys having your own window, and I don't know what they're going to go back to when the world returns to normal. But I agree. You know, there's so much rugby on in a weekend. You can only watch so much, and if people are playing at the same time, you've got a choice to make. Whereas you guys standing alone, 100% agree with you. Yeah, I think it's gone good. I mean, it'd be nice to have a normal format, because you guys can't claim a Grand Slam, can you?
No, we can't.
That would have been nice to have that. Do you think, in terms of that format, do you think playing, it's 5 games, isn't it? Yeah, 6 nations, but it's 5 games. Do you think playing 5 games on the bounce helps you kind of gel and bond and perform better over time? Whereas you guys basically went in cold into 2 games, then a week off, and then a final. Do you think, I mean, which is fantastic that you just dealt with what was in front of you, but would you agree that over 5 games you'd be so much better, far more consistent, and probably closer to that all-round performance you're talking about, Lark?
The games that we play, especially together, and having that 5-game period within the 6 nations normally is massive for us in terms of that building towards sort of like the last game. And it obviously depends structurally what it looks like, whether it's sort of home away games, and having all of that within the tournament. I think it felt almost, especially for those people that may have not been involved in the Italy game and had been involved in the Scotland game, sort of playing that one game and then going straight into the final, it's quite different compared to like what you're used to in terms of those 5 games. So I think massively, like the more time we spend together, which, you know, we're really fortunate with at the moment, and with our contracts as well, it means that we do spend a lot of time together even when we're with our clubs. But playing those games together, I think is massive. Like you can train sort of the PPP that we're doing, but actually when you get onto the game field and that into that match day, it is a different dynamic. And yes, it's like that PPP is preparing us massively for what we're doing, but it is like so different on match day in terms of, you know, the decisions to make, the intensity of it, what you're going to face depending on opposition.
Brilliant. Tysh, England winning the title 3 times on the bounce now. What's that say about the squad? And a wider sort of question, what's it say about the health or the riches in women's rugby in England right now?
I think like women's rugby, I'm not that old, but like looking back at when I first started and then having like 8 players on a Saturday and having to borrow some from other teams and stuff. And then you look at it now and there's so many clubs that have like under 13s teams and then like a minis team. So I think it's grown massively. But I think, like I said before, having it streamed so young girls can watch it and go, oh, I want to be like, say, Lark, I want to be like a Detysha or a Shauna Brown. And then having like idols that they can actually see. Because I just think if you don't know about it, you don't like aspire to be it.
100% agree. And what about the so the depth of your squad or the strength of your squad? Obviously winning 3 times on the bounce. I mean, we'll keep saying it, but apparently 7 times on the bounce is the record that this team needs to beat, because your formers have won it 7 times in a row. So I was like 3 times is really impressive, which it is. But I mean, you've got to chase down at least 7 or 8 now, which is crazy. But look at the strength of your squad now. Do you feel there's genuine, you know, depth in competition? Are you guys fighting for places on that team?
Yeah, I think you come into camp on like a Monday and you've got no idea what selection is going to be, because it's like an MMA fight for that shirt. That's how much competition's in camp at the minute. So you pack your bags, but you pack your bags like for the longer the longer run, but you don't know if you're going home on a Wednesday after PPP, you've got no idea. But I think that's good because then that challenges everyone to be at their best, like the majority of the time.
I've just worked out that Lark's really confident because she told me she's an overpacker. She like hoards all her stuff into her room. So she must be pretty confident in her ability that she's going to be playing.
I think it's just like to know that I've got everything I need with me in any eventuality. I feel like I'm a bit like the mum of the squad. So like if someone comes to me and is like, Lark, you got a spare hairband. I know that sounds really silly, but the amount of times people snap a hairband and stuff like that on game day and I'm like, yeah, here you go. Or Lark, have you got this? Yeah, of course. Lark, you got your nail stuff? Yeah, of course, borrow it, off you go. I think on T's point as well, like we're really fortunate in the position that we're in, sort of compared to maybe some of the other countries that are playing within our Six Nations in terms of that professionalism and being contracted. And yes, we've got players within our squad that don't have contracts, but I think the support that we get in terms of that is massive. So, you know, we both me and T play at Lightning with quite a lot of the Scotland girls, and obviously they're juggling working with playing rugby as well, and sort of coming from that myself and doing that, like it's really difficult. And you know, you hope that other nations will follow and that will sort of continue to grow in terms of the women's game so that they do have those opportunities in terms of becoming professional. So yeah, I think that's a massive thing that also is really important for us as a squad, is being able to have that time together and, you know, being professional rugby players. And other people have like jobs on the side and stuff like that, but first and foremost, you know, that's what we do.
We're going to move on to your rugby journeys. I gather I did extensive research on you both, and your early sort of rugby experience have ties to your families. Like I read that you used to watch rugby with your dad. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so I loved watching rugby with my dad, sort of, and my one grandparent as well. Like my grandpa is what I call him because he's the Welsh side of the family. So would watch a lot of rugby with them and didn't necessarily know that I could do it myself. Sort of obviously watching men's rugby, didn't really see any women's rugby up until a teacher came into school and was like, going to play tag rugby, girls and boys can get involved. Really enjoyed it. Sort of said to mum and dad after, I was like, I want to play rugby. Like, what do I do? Is there a local club? And then sort of that started everything off really. But yeah, just loved the physicality of it, loved the different skills within it. So yeah, watching it with my dad is still something I enjoy doing when I get the opportunity.
Cool. I love that. And I love it how kids, they want to play rugby, right? Then they go play tag. The kids that can't be on the field are all playing like tackle and wrestling off the side of the field. Tysh, being a true northerner, bit of rugby league for you early days. And am I right in saying that your brothers were playing and you said to your mum, like, if they're playing, like, why can't I go?
Yeah. So I remember being like quite young, and then I've got an older brother. So I used to go and watch him like every Saturday, every Sunday. And then my younger brother started playing and I just like, Mum, what about me? Why do you never take me? Just as a joke. And then she went, you know what, I'll take you next week. And then I remember turning up, and then my first ever night of rugby training, it was like dead dark, throwing it down. I was like, oh, typical. And then like everyone was so nice and I was like, oh. And I think we did tackling as well. I had no idea what I was doing, but I was like, oh, I'll give it a go. And then my first coach, he was called Trev. He was like, she took to it like a duck in water. And I was like, all right, see you next week. I'll be back.
Brilliant. So was that rugby union at that point, or was that rugby league?
That was rugby union at that point.
And so how did you find your way to league and then back to union? Like, talk to me about those transitions.
So I was like, we had a rugby union season, but at under 15s and under 18s, there wasn't that many girls about. So the games we had, we didn't really have many. And it was literally just the same teams we used to play. So then when I turned 16, on my 16th birthday, I went and played my first open age rugby league game. So in summer, I'd go and play league, and then in winter, I'd come back to rugby union. But rugby league was what my older brother played, and then union was what my younger brother played.
I'm just thinking, like, at what point for you both, I'm going to ask you both this, did the penny drop? So I'm going to come to you first, like, and you kind of said to yourself, I love this. I want to do this. I want to play for England. You know, when did that sort of start for you, that process?
I think so when I was at secondary school, we my local club was called Luctonians, and they'd bring sort of all the girls from across the county to like these Monday night sessions, and lots of sort of different age groups and stuff. And I think my first contact session that I did there, like I was just like, I love that. That was great. Like it was really wet, really muddy. But I was like, I really enjoyed that. And I think for me, like I really enjoy like the training aspect of it. And like those really hard training sessions are actually what I really enjoy at times. And like, yeah, sometimes they're hard, but like that's what I really liked about it. And so when I was in sort of age group rugby, there was a few girls, and we were based at a club called Greyhounds Rugby Football Club in Hereford, and it was sort of like 4 or 5 of us most weeks, but we'd do like loads of different like passing skills and lots of technical stuff that actually I really, really enjoyed. And I was sort of like, what do I go on to next? And so my age group rugby actually was where, because I was playing at Worcester, I had lots of people above me in the senior squad that I was sort of like, wow, this is what they're doing. Sort of they're playing for England. And that's where I started to actually see what people were doing, like the women that were playing for England. Because before that, I hadn't really seen it as much. Like it wasn't at that time sort of readily available for people to watch and stuff like that. So being around that environment, I was like, I had those role models, you know. I was lucky enough when I started senior rugby at Worcester to have Rocky Clark one side of me and Laura Keats the other. So 2 like world-class props and me as a tiny little hooker, sort of just finding my way into women's rugby. And I think at that point it was like, actually, I really want to do this. You know, I want to go on and play for England. And I think
Was that made easier when you've got someone like Rocky next to you that played 100 and 200 times? I don't know what the number is, but she's ridiculously capped. Was that easier for you to see that pathway when you were playing with someone like Rocky?
Yeah, massively. And I think as well, like if you look at the Worcester squad at that time, sort of we had Donna Kennedy, who I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is still the most capped player. She's capped for Scotland, coaching us, and just like Kat Merchant on the wing, sort of Lydia Thompson, like just a team full of people that were showing me the way and that wanted to help me, and you know, were out there sort of living and breathing it. So I think that was massive in terms of my development.
Am I right in saying, a bit like Liam Riley, you made like a bit of a plan? You wrote down some stuff. Am I making that up, or is that true?
No, that is true. So when I was quite young, I sort of put down a plan of what I wanted to do, and it's not all gone to plan. So it was kind of just there because I'm definitely like a goal setter. I like to put things out and plan ahead. And I think.
Hang on. What do you mean it's not gone to plan? You're a fully fledged England international. What else was on the plan? Like, where have you fallen short in your lofty ambitions?
Yeah, so actually I always had on that plan the big tournament in Belfast in 2017, and I didn't make it. Like I didn't get into the squad. So I think like for me that was massive in terms of where I was at the time. So I didn't make the squad. Like I was a newly qualified teacher that year, so I was in my first year of like balancing teaching, rugby, and it was really difficult. Like it was one of those things that actually I looked at all the girls going out there and playing and stuff and was like, wow, what do I need to do now? Like what's next? So I went part-time with work after that year. Was like, right, okay, I need to change something. So I was like, okay, the one thing I can change and can control is the amount of work that I'm putting in to get to the position that I want to be in. So I went down to 3.5 days a week teaching. So it doesn't sound like that much less, but having that day and a half extra And the way it was worked out in the week just allowed for more time for me to go and train. And that was sort of the year then that I got my first start for England. And
I love that, because there's so many lessons in there. Lots of people say they want to do things and they wait for them to happen and nothing happens. But you actively shift your working week. You write things down. I think it's brilliant. I think it's really cool.
Thank you.
Well done. Tysh, what about you? Because I mean, you're a baby face in this team. You're one of the kids. You know what I mean? You have 5 caps, right?
Yeah.
When did the penny drop that this was there for you?
So basically, I remember getting my first Lancashire trial, and I literally cried after it because I was like, oh God, what if I don't get in and stuff? And like my coach would come up to me and be like, don't worry if you don't get in, like you're really new to rugby and stuff. And I was like, what's he telling me that for? And then when I got accepted into that, I was a bit like, well, if I can do that, I can do anything. But then in high school, like the boys would play rugby in high school, but there wouldn't be a girls' team. We'd play like netball or something like that. And I was like, oh. And they would be like, oh, imagine if Tysh makes it and we don't. And I was like, well, I'm going to prove you very right. And then it was kind of being in the pathway and then just getting like selected for stuff. I was like, well, if I keep working hard and like keep doing things that I can do to make myself better, then maybe I'll like have an opportunity and have a shot. But then I also used my playing on a Saturday to an advantage. So I'd be like, right, which team could I go to that would benefit me? So I started out at Waterloo. And then I remember Blaze being like, oh, Tysh, if you want us to like look at you, we need you to carry more. And I was like, how am I meant to carry more on a team that's constantly defending for 80 minutes? And then that's when I got in touch with Reese at Lightning, and then I made the swap there. And that's probably one of the best decisions I've made in my life. But then another hard thing was, a bit like Lark, to make sure I could focus on training and put time in for that. I just thought I need to stay in education for a bit longer because you have a bit of leeway and it's a bit flexible there. So I was like, if I stay in education, don't get a real job, it like my time's just mine and I can do what I want with it.
And it obviously helps when you go play along England internationals, you know what I mean? It's a far easier progression. Let's go back to your kind of first cap experiences. Like you out in Canada, can you throw or cast your mind back that far?
Yeah, I can. Yeah. It seems so long ago now, and it looking back, I'm like, wow, I was like so small. I think I was probably about, trying to work it out, maybe even like 18 kg smaller than I am now. And yeah, it was an amazing experience, obviously, but I just remember sort of the heat was definitely one thing that like was like I'd never experienced, like being out and playing in rugby in that heat, and sort of obviously getting your first cap as well. I think my mum and dad watched it like from my sister's phone in a service station, because at the time my sister was still swimming. So my older sister Fern is from a swimming background, and so I think they were with her for an event. So we were all sort of like crowded around a phone, and like they took a picture and sent it to me after the game to say like, you know, we watched the live stream. Obviously, like to be involved and to go on a tour was massive and a really good experience for me in terms of seeing what I needed to do to get to where I wanted to be. And obviously to get my first cap was incredible too.
Did you remember, do you get your shirt like the evening before the game, and did you kind of go back to your room and you've made like your plan with your goal setting, and you've dropped your teaching days to dedicate to your craft? Yeah. Was that moment really, really special for you?
Yeah, it was. And I think I've still got a picture. So when you get your first cap, we always get a rose as well. So you get your shirt and your rose the night before, and Sense does like a little speech for those that have new caps, which is really special. And so I think I went back to my room, sort of laid out my shirt and my rose on it and took a picture of it. And I'm pretty sure I've still got it as a background of my phone. And I know that sounds really like cheesy, but I think it just like is a reminder of that whole process of like where it's like happened and where I've got to now.
Okay, so let's fast forward 80 minutes. You play that game, you're capped now. Do you then become enlightened that if you want to do that again, like the hard work starts again?
Yeah, I think I was always aware of like how much hard work you needed to put in. I think for me, like obviously I've spoken about in terms of like the juggling, studies and like work and stuff, it was how do I manage that? Like how do you do it? Like, and I think that was always something that I sort of had in the back of my mind, because I knew it was really important to have a career as well, and as well as the rugby, because at that time it was an amateur game essentially. So I think for me then, being at university and studying teaching, sort of quite a lot of my university time, it wasn't quite like a normal course. Like we did a lot of placements in school. So it was them working out and sort of talking to people who were teachers in the squad. Like, okay, how do you get your training in? Like, when do you do it? Do you do it at the beginning of the day, really early morning, or late at night? And then how do you manage all of that in terms of getting to where you need to be? And I think sort of obviously, like I've said, that not making the 2017 World Cup and going part-time with teaching was where I really went, right, okay, I'm going to give it my like all I possibly can. Like, I think the issue that I always found was with teaching and with rugby was that I wanted to be the best that I could at both, and it was really, really hard to do that. Like, I wanted to be like an outstanding teacher and do my best for the children I was teaching, but also do that at rugby too, and something had to give. So I think that was the bit that really sort of for me was that turning point of that sort of switch, and where I sort of really started to develop.
Brilliant. And Tysh, let's throw it back to last year. Do you know what? Back in normal times when we had crowds, I understand that your mother was there to see you get capped. Can you talk me through the emotions of that?
For me, it didn't really feel that real, because I remember on a Wednesday I had like a bit of a books game, and then I think it was Thursday, Blaze rang me and he was like, "Oh, Tysh, are you available to come into camp like tomorrow?" And I was like, yeah. And then that was when I found out I was getting capped, and I was like, oh God,
whoa,
it's not going to be like a Wednesday. And then like I told my mum and my nana and stuff, and like they was all crying. And then when they came, I remember just sat there on the bench and I could hear my nana starting songs with the fans, and I was like, oh God. But then after it, I remember like I was like the last one out of the change rooms, because I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to like stand up and get something off Sunts, because she'd stand up after the game and she'd like say something really nice and really special, like as well as she did in shirt press, and she did it again in front of everyone. And then like my nana was there sobbing, and I was like, oh, get me out of here. But it was really nice, especially to have like people. I think my mum came, my nana came, and then my best friend and her dad came. So it was really nice to have all those people there. But then I remember after the game, my first ever cap, the drug testers was like, "Yeah, you come on." I was like, "Oh, what do you do?"
I'm not going to ask you what you had to do, but it takes the gloss off that moment, I suppose, when you should be enjoying it with your teammates and your family, right?
Yeah.
Can you both tell me how you came to find your place in the front row? I'm going to come to you first, Tysh.
So basically, when I first started playing rugby, I started at Eccles, and I think I played 8. Obviously, really new. I was like proper half of the size I am now. And I was like quite fast, and I was like, oh, I quite like this position, but it wasn't like proper scrums or lineouts or anything. It was, where you have 3 stand in the line and then someone just throws it in, you just get the ball. But then I remember my first coach, Trev, he was like, "You're probably going to be a prop in the future." And I was like, "Oh, I'm not being a prop." Because back then as well, people associated props as like big fat people that literally just scrummed and didn't do anything else. And I was like, I'm never going to be that.
Well, and they always associate a certain IQ with the front row as well. It's not fair. It's certainly not fair.
And then I think like my last year of under 18s divisional, they said to me like, oh, you've got more chance of making it if you move to the front row. And they said this to both me and Sarah Beckett. So at first I was just a bit like, but then I was like, to be fair, I don't really care where I play as long as I can play, because it's not like specific parts of the game that I enjoy, it's all of it. So then I said, you know what, if you teach me what to do, I'll move there. And then it was weird because I'd played like 8 second row, flanker. I'd played every position in the scrum apart from hooker. And I'm never playing there because I'm too tall. And then it was like the last end of my like 18-year-old days when then I officially moved to prop. But then my first year of senior rugby, I played at tight head. And then it was like our loose head got injured. So there was like, oh, Tysh, like, I don't suppose you can play this side. And I was like, I'll give it a go. And then I moved over to the other side. And then I think I enjoy loose head more. So I can kind of play both. But after watching the scrums yesterday, I was like, thank God I'm not playing that side. So
that is a gnarly side. Tight head is a gnarly position.
So I'm quite happy now in my place as a loose.
So you basically found your way from 8 to back row to lock to front row. You've probably got a great appreciation for everyone's jobs in the scrum. Whereas Lark, I can't imagine you played lock before you played hooker.
I think I was always destined with my height to be in the front row, maybe.
I didn't want to say anything.
It's all right. I'm normally at the end of a lot of height jokes. I think there's a picture of me tackling Fall from yesterday that went on the players group. But literally, like, I look half the height of her.
That's perfect for a low tackle, though, right?
Great tackle.
I think because I knew that, like, my dad had always played in the front row, he was always quite keen for me to be a prop or a hooker. And I kind of, similar to Tysh, really, like, I think playing age group rugby, the coaches that I had, one of them being Pete Williams, he was always like really keen for, even if he knew that we'd eventually probably play in the front row, he wanted us to have those experiences, sort of playing in the centres mainly, just to get sort of the experience of doing that and to develop our skill set. So I think up until playing senior rugby, I sort of played in a few different positions, back row, front row, in the centres. But then when I got to senior rugby, I think it was a case of actually from my age group rugby, I always enjoyed throwing. And it was something that probably came a bit more naturally to me than other people. And they were sort of like, actually, right, we think hooker's your place to be. And sort of went from there, really. Started playing at Worcester at 18 in the front row and haven't really played anywhere else since. So definitely probably been a longer journey for me in terms of playing hooker. And I think, I really enjoy it. Like, I like the part of the skill set in terms of the throw in and at scrum time, and then also sort of what you expect hooker to be on pitch as well. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, Tom Young started as a centre. I played all my age group rugby with Tom Young. So he was the 12 and I was the loose head prop. And then we both ended up at hooker. So for you to go from centre to front row is fairly impressive. But I need to challenge you on something. You were quite natural at throwing the ball. That just doesn't happen. Like, you don't just become natural at throwing the ball. It comes with time and application and practice. Did you have an obsession with throwing?
As in, like, throwing the ball, like, 2 hands overhead. Like, I know it sounds silly, but it's something that, like, I used to do with my dad in the garden. Like, before, like age group rugby, I'd just, like, throw it, like, we'd be passing, like, in the garden, like, I'd throw it overhead. So, like, I'd probably had more exposure to it, which then meant that when I got to training and they were like, right, we're introducing line outs, I could throw it. And I think, it's definitely something that I put in hours of work into now. But when I was sort of very young, like, it was something that I could do because I'd experienced it and I was used to doing it.
Brilliant. Where are you born in your family? Is it Fern and Poppy, your sisters?
Holly and Fern. Sorry, and I'm Holly, the youngest.
You're the youngest. Right. Yeah. I read something the other day. I'm just going to quickly go off on a bit of a tangent. But second or like third, like if you're firstborn in your family, unlucky, right? But second, third borns, professional sportsmen and women tend to be second, third borns because they're constantly losing or learning as kids, whereas the oldest are always like the best at everything. And they don't have to learn and be thrifty on how to win and beat their older siblings. So the whole time, psychologically, you're learning how to compete or play. It's almost like playing a year ahead. So then when you become to adults, they reckon you've basically got this thing in your head where you know how to learn and adapt and deal with resilience and setback, you know, all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So, hey, the three of us, we're all second, third borns there.
It's interesting,
right.
isn't it?
Can we go back to the script? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Smack.
I know the research you're talking about as well. I've read it myself.
Have you?
Yeah.
Well, you're a teacher, aren't you? Clever cookie. I was just saying that the front row attracts plenty of unique and colourful personalities. Would you say that's true of the Red Roses? Because we all know that the best people in a rugby team are usually front row. They're the most interesting, easily.
That's true.
Give me a quick breakdown of I don't know, who is the most interesting in your front row counterparts?
I think the funniest person in the front row is like Amy Cockayne, because she's just so blunt and straight to the point. But then seeing how she is in like a rugby environment and then thinking that she works in the RAF like police department, I just can't picture her doing that. I wouldn't take her seriously.
What? So you're saying she tries to be serious and have some authority, but you just see it as a joke?
I'd see it as a joke because I'm just like, what? And some of the stuff she comes out with as well, I just think it's really funny.
What about you, Lark? Who are you going with?
I feel like we have characters across the board. I think we are quite a diverse group. You've got lots of different personalities, and like Tysh is constantly making everyone laugh in camp. Like I'm bigging her up here, but like she's so good to like, it's just so much fun to be around. Like you're guaranteed to be laughing at something, sometimes at her expense. Sorry, Tysh, but but yeah, from like Tysh to Shauna to like Bryony Cleo, like
I'm a big fan of Bryony.
Yeah, like Bryony again, like will just like some of the comments she comes out with will just get everyone laughing. Or I think we're as a group just really different, and I think that's what's great about it. Like Vic Cornborough as well, like again, very different personality, just loads of different personalities. It's hard to choose from one.
Let's move on off the field. I've got to know a bit more about your rugby careers. I want to know more about you guys off the field. Lark, Harriet said you are the baker of the squad. Is that something you do in your downtime?
Yeah, definitely. I think I like being able to like make stuff for people. So if I can bake like just a little pick me up for people, like after games or after a hard training session, then like on my days off, I'll try and like bake something new or a bit different. Or if some of the girls put in requests, like obviously me and T play at Lightning, and quite often on a Saturday game day, it will be something normally involving Biscoff because that's a popular one. But yeah, definitely say baking's something that I quite enjoy doing, just to switch off and then enjoy then giving it to people and making sure I don't eat too much of it myself.
I find that's the biggest problem, right? I'm not the baker in my house, but my daughter and my wife are always mixing, making, baking. And the biggest problem is like they've got this sort of self-control thing where they can have one piece, one slice, one biscuit. I'm just like, that thing's warm. It's got to go. It's got to be done. Like I've got to work my way through it. So it's a bit different now, but when I played, I had to limit the baking. Tysh, what about you? Any hidden talents?
So like when I'm away from rugby, I enjoy doing like performances, sometimes just in my bedroom, dancing and singing, messing about. And then I watch it back and I just think, that's so funny. It's so funny because it's so awful.
Are we talking like TikTok kind of things, or are you just setting your camera up on a tripod? And
I don't have TikTok, but like normally like a Snapchat. And then I'll send it to like my mates, like Sarah Beckett, Ellie Kildunn, sometimes Sean, and you know, because I just think if it's making me laugh, it might make them laugh. And then whenever they need like a little 5-10 minutes, a little laugh in the day, I'm just like, yeah, have this.
And I believe you can sing.
I get a bit of stage fright.
But you are competent, yeah? You can belt one out.
Well, Sarah Byrne says I've got a voice like an angel.
She has
Very
got a
kind.
pretty good voice, to be fair to her.
Okay.
I
I'm not
enjoy
gonna ask you.
Tysh's performances.
I'm not going to ask you to sing. I've kind of put words in your mouth in terms of baking, Lark, but have you got any other hobbies away from it? You obviously got, you're engaged, right? I've been through
Yep.
your Instagram, you see, you're engaged. Tysh, I couldn't find yours.
I'm on private.
I couldn't even search for you. But yeah, have you got any other sort of hobbies away from the game? What do you get up to when you're not training, playing, baking, dreaming about teaching kids?
Teaching children seems like a lifetime ago now. It's been so long. Yeah, obviously me and my fiance Jamie quite like getting outdoors, and I'm looking forward to the summer a bit. Managed to get a paddle board, so looking forward to being able to get out on that a bit more. My sister lives down in Swansea, actually. I know that you mentioned Swansea earlier.
I've been out in that bloody harbour or bay or whatever it is.
To be fair, if you go a bit further out into the Gower, it's quite nice. So yeah,
we went out next to the big
that.
sewage pipe. You know, that big pipe that
Yeah.
all the poo going out.
Yeah, that's not where you want to go.
that.
You want to get out further towards the Gower, and you get the really nice beaches. So yeah, like I've said before as well, I'm a big reader. I'll constantly have about 5 different books that I'll be reading. So that's something I'll enjoy doing just as a bit of downtime, really. So
quick fire, favorite book?
Oh, I actually really like all of the Maya Angelou books.
Wow, explain who that is and what that is.
She's activist, poet, writer. She basically wrote memoirs of her life, and I think there's 7 books, but I read all of those I think through last year's Six Nations, and just sort of really interesting to read about all of her experiences in terms of sort of being a Black woman in America, and just found them really interesting. But I also really enjoy sort of more about sort of mindset, psychology, that sort of thing, and potentially want to retrain into some sort of profession within psychology. So I think those are probably more the way that my books that I read at the moment go.
There's so many things I want to pick up on here. So Tysh, I know you're doing psychology, but I want to go back to the book. So you're not just a casual reader. If you read 7 books throughout 6 Nations, you're averaging a book every 4 or 5 days. Is that right? Is that good maths? I'm not good at maths, but
it depends. I didn't get through all of them within that time, but I know that I was I read quite a few, and I think my worst habit is that I'll have a different book for what I want to read at that point in the day. So I might have one one non-fiction, one fiction, and then another one on the go at the time. So I might pick a different book up at a time, and we'll be reading different ones.
I'm starting to understand the overpacking thing now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tysh, what about you? Obviously studying, I was going to say in your spare time, in your downtime, what have you got any other hobbies or passions outside of the game?
So I study sport and exercise psychology because I really like the mental aspect of sport and how people's mental ability can be affected. So setbacks and stuff. And I think in football, you hear about a lot of it now. So players that get released from clubs and stuff like that. And just knowing, I like to talk to people. It sounds stupid, but I think I'm a natural therapist. So I'm what's going on in your life? Oh, tell me more about that. I'm quite nosy, but just because I care. So I like to know if people are genuinely all right. And if not, how can I help?
Do you kind of see yourself progressing into that sort of role, into sports psych or something like that?
Yeah, definitely, because I think in that profession, I can kind of relate to it myself because I've been through a lot of the stuff that other athletes have been through, and I kind of know how to cope with it. So I could share my coping mechanisms with them and sympathize with them, because I think sometimes you get people that study these professions, but they don't actually know what it's like themselves because they've never been in that position.
So is it, have you heard about the thing about adversity and kids and stuff like that usually go on to be great sportsmen and women? Do you believe in that, or early challenges and things like that? Because I'm just thinking, if there's some young kids listening, some young girls, some young boys, like, it's not always plain sailing. Like, you're going to deal with setbacks every day, every week, every month of your sporting journey. I see it as a good thing, because you build like a resilience and a work ethic type thing.
Yeah, I think like every time you get a setback and every time you get a challenge, it makes you a better player, because you're so used to having setbacks and challenges that sometimes when you do work as hard, but when something comes a bit easier, you're like, is this actually happening, kind of thing? But I think it definitely makes you resilient. And I think everybody's journey and path is different. So just because somebody has to put a bit more time in doing like one thing, it doesn't mean you're any worse of a player or anything. It just means like everyone's different, and everyone might have the same destination, but how we get there obviously depends on us. And it can take one person a year and another person 3 years, but as long as we get there, that's all that matters.
We're all on a journey, just at different stages. Very wise words. There you go. Right, ladies, thank you for your time. I understand you've got a forwards meeting to go sit through, but you can sit through it knowing that you're champions. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your insights. Have a good day, and good luck for next week in your friendly. See you later.
Thank you.